Now, as we go into the Grey Havens, there was a part that I found pretty awesome. It says, the day after the battle, Frodo rode off and he sets free some of the prisoners. And there was this old little hobbit, Labolia, and said, poor thing, she looked very old and thin when they rescued her from a dark and narrow cell. She insisted on
Well,
hobbling
that's
out on
the
her.
Sackville Baggins lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that wanted all of his inheritance from Bilbo, and he gave it to her. He let her have the bag end for a while, I believe.
Yeah. And she was imprisoned. But what I like about it, though, is it shows that, this old, frail hobbit lady, she had the balls to stand up to Sharky and all that. And they said she was very old and thin when they rescued her from a dark and narrow cell. She insisted on hobbling out on her own feet, and she had such a welcome, and there was such clapping and cheering when she appeared, leaning on Frodo's arm, but still clutching her umbrella, that she was quite touched and drove away in tears. She had never in her life been popular before. And she was crushed by the news of Lotho's murder, and she would not return to Bag End. She gave it back to Frodo and went to her own people, the brace girdles of Hard Bottle.
I could easily see her standing up to Saruman, though.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, she was a real piece of work to Frodo and Bilbo. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Well, and showing that sometimes when crap goes bad, it's the young people that are the cowards and the old people that have the fortitude to stand up, either through life experience or they've seen it before. I don't know, but the old people.
Old people don't take shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. They figure, you know what? I'm too old for this shit, literally.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Yes. And then he says, when the poor creature died next spring, she was after all more than 100 years old, Frodo was surprised and much moved. She had left all that remained of her money and of Lotho's for him to use in helping hobbits made homeless by the Troubles. I mean, come on.
Oh,
how sweet.
Yeah.
And so that feud was ended. And it also points out that these hobbits they were left homeless. It's like, my gosh. So there it was. I for some reason just really liked that part of it all.
No, it's a feel good moment because he's going out and helping his own people. And, that's the thing. Hobbits are such simple, want for nothing people. They just want to enjoy their simple life and, their 11 meals a day and, the comfort of their own home and the green lands, that's all they want. And it takes, something away from someone who doesn't have a whole lot, or to take everything away from them. Kind of unfair, and now they literally have nothing.
Yeah, as you said. Timon is here. Hello. Yes. Yeah, that said, as we said, the older you get, the more you realize you have less and less F's to give. So,
yeah, true.
That's it too. Yeah. And then Frodo actually becomes deputy mayor for a while. The mayor was he needed he needed a lot of feeding up before he could look the part of mayor. He didn't have as much hardship as others, but so Frodo agreed to take him to act as his deputy until he was in shape again. And then they spend a lot of time going and rebuilding. So the rebuilding after the war. Oh, it's just so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. To think of the Shire like this. But as Sam's all being all sad, saying, "It's just we can replant these things." And Sam says, "Yeah, maybe our grandchildren or great grandchildren will be able to see what the Hobbit should be." Well, then he remembers, duh, he had that special box that Galadriel had given him, in which he found a small silver seed, which he planted. So yay! So it's going to start with the gift that Galadriel had given him.
Well, and at this point, you forget that he has it, because of all the stuff they've been through. It's like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So so that was really good. And then now that everything's all good, Frodo's like, "Okay, Sam, you can come live with me in Bag Inn." And then Sam, it's like he's all blushing and stuff and going, "Well, I wanted to go ahead and marry Rosie." And then Sam was like, "Well, then that doesn't mean that you can't stay around. Just bring Rosie in here and we'll be one happy family." And one thing I like about when he said that he had spoken to Rosie when he'd proposed to her, Sam goes, it seems she didn't like my going abroad at all.
Aw.
But as I hadn't spoken, she couldn't say no. But now I have spoken and she says, "Well, you've wasted a year, so why wait longer?" "Wasted," I says. "I wouldn't call it that." It's like, I don't wasted a year. I only saved the world. But, why not? Uh, and then I see, "You want to get married? Well, come all and live here and we'll have the biggest families you can wish for." And of course, some people pulled it out of their butts that said it was like some secret gay thing and they were some plural family. And it's like, no. Crying
No,
out loud, they were friends.
yeah, it was a brotherly love, not a sexual kind of thing.
Exactly. And that happens all the time where bachelor people, especially back then, would have their friends come and move in and all that, especially if you had a really big house. Everyone knows that if you've ever read anything by Elizabeth Gaskell or Jane Austen. So there. As Nerdapoopus says, and notably, Sam spreads the dust from the box all over the Shire. Typical, thoughtful, and generous. Yes, yes, yes. Rosie, shut up and kiss me, you fool. Something like
Aw.
that. Something like that. So, sure enough, the first baby comes, and Frodo's spending a lot of this time writing books, and he's starting to withdraw from everything. And Sam's like, "What's the matter, Mr. Frodo?" And Frodo answers, "I'm wounded. I'll never really heal." It's like, oh.
He's
So
really playing up that victim card, though, for being stabbed a year ago.
Oh,
Oh my God.
yeah, because it was a year before. Yeah.
But it was a Morgul blade.
It still hurts a bit.
Oh, oh my gosh. You go and you get stabbed by a stupid Nazgul and see how well you do. All right. And the next day or two, Frodo went through his papers and his writings with Sam. And it has an unexpected journey there and back again, and what happened ever, adventures of 5 hobbits, the tale of the Great Ring. This is one hell of a long title that Bilbo or that they had, and then compiled by Bilbo Baggins from his own observations and from accounts of his friends, what we did in the War of the Ring. That's what Bilbo wrote. And here Bilbo's hand ended, and Frodo had written the downfall of the Lord of the Rings and the return of the king. So much more concise. But I think that's a badass thing because that says it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. When I read that, when I reread that part, it's like, oh my gosh. So the downfall of the bad guy and the return of the king, and the hope that everything. And then there's some singing. Yeah, Frodo, he sings softly to himself, and he sings some songs about Elbereth. I don't know, but I think that, Steve, you don't mind this kind of singing because...
Yeah, there's no enemies around.
Yeah, so it's not like they're going to
You're
be
calling
caught.
the enemy to you.
Yeah.
Follow the singing. That's how we'll get them.
Yeah.
It's the same problem I have with horror movies when they scream and give away their position,
Yeah.
or when they start talking loudly when the killer is nearby.
And you're like, shut up, you idiots.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, we need to get to the car. And like the killer hears it and disables the car.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong, Steve. You're not wrong at all. Or they start going, is anybody here? That's the equivalent of when Sam would sit up and start reciting poetry. But anyway, so Sam's like, I'm done with this book. The last pages are for you. And then he's gonna go with he says he asked Sam to go ahead and come with him on a journey. He says, I want to go to Rivendell. He doesn't really tell him exactly what's going on. And as Frodo, Sam, and the others set out, they meet Elrond and Galadriel, who wore 2 of the elven rings. And riding behind the 2 elves was Bilbo himself. Sam and Frodo accompany the travelers to the Great Sea. So, and I love the way it describes the way that they travel. Oh yeah, and that's when I think Sam finds out that Frodo's leaving. He goes, the ring bearers should go together. He goes, where are you going, Sam? Though at last he understood what was happening. To the haven, Sam, said Frodo. And Sam goes, and I can't come. No, Sam, not yet anyway. Not further than the havens, though you too were a ring bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. But do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do. But, said Sam, tears starting in his eyes, I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too for years and years after all you had done. So I thought so too once, says Frodo, but I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger, someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. Oh. So, that's the whole thing, is that those that make the sacrifice can't actually enjoy it. And I think that that's also a little bit about the whole comrades in arms, and that the PTSD and all the memories from the war, all that kind of stuff. And then, last but not least, comes along Gandalf. And he was wearing openly on his hand the 3rd ring. And he's also going to take the ship with them all. But Sam was now sorrowful at heart, for it seemed him that if the parting would be bitter, more grievous still would be a long road home alone. Oh. But even as they stood there, and the elves were going aboard, and all was being made ready to part, up rode Merry and Pippin in great haste. And amid his tears, Pippin laughed. You tried to give us a slip once before and failed. So this time you have nearly succeeded, but you have failed again. It was not Sam, though, that gave you away this time, but Gandalf himself. Yes, said Gandalf, for it will be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. And here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship in Middle Earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil. It's like the end. It's like a benediction. Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard, and the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew, and slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey firth, and the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed into the west, until at last on a night of rain Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air, and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise.
Which is a line given to Gandalf in the movie, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
He said it to Pippin, this is not the end. And then he describes that line, I think, in Gondor.
And in the song Into the West, it uses that line, now we'll turn to silver glass. Sort of Poopas Converse says, and that's why I get annoyed when people dismiss Lord of the Rings as a typical fairy tale with a happy ending. Yeah. Well, it has a happy ending from a certain point of view. But yes, not in the sense of, and they all lived happily ever after. But, yay, Frodo finally gets to cross over the sea and rest. Obviously a symbol of kind of a heaven. But to Sam, the evening deepened into darkness as he stood at the haven, and as he looked at the gray sea, he saw only a shadow on the waters that was soon lost in the west. There he stood far into the night, hearing only the sigh and murmur of the waves on the shore of Middle-earth. And the sound of them sank deep into his heart. Beside him stood Merry and Pippin, and they were silent. And then, they all go home, and Merry and Pippin go to their place. Sam arrives at his house. Rosie drew him in and set him in his chair and put little Eleanor upon his lap. He drew a deep breath. Well, I'm back, he said. The end.
The final word. I'm back. There and back again. Good ending.
Yes. Yes. What a way to end. I know some people, when they first hear that, they're like, what? Huh? And the way they did that at the end of the movie, too. Those that maybe didn't know that was straight from the book. But, oh my gosh. Yeah. I love it. And it's melancholy, too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, any fantasy story, when it ends, tends to be a bit like that.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of fantasy stories that are kind of big that have been ended in the last few years. The Wheel of Time ended. The Shannara series by Terry Brooks ended. Rift War by Feist. The Sword of Truth ended. That's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And all of them have the same feeling, because it's over.
Yeah. Especially when you really feel like these people are your friends and you've traveled with them. And I think it had to be a realistic tale. And gosh, in the appendices, you learn a little bit more about their fates. Though the one with Aragorn is really kind of depressing.
Oh, no. It kind of is.
Yeah. I mean, he rules really well and long, and they have a gazillion kids. But then he dies really old, but he dies, and Arwen is kind of left all alone and kind of fades away and kind of in despair almost. It's I don't know. And we know that Aemir, becomes king. He gets married, and Mary comes and serves, and so does Pippin, and Awen and Faramir go off to Ithilien, and they have at least one son. We know that. And Gimli with Legolas go, and they have all these adventures, and then both of them end up going themselves to the west. They build a boat, don't they? They actually build a special boat to get over there.
They
I
they
believe so.
they shot a scene for the movies. I think you can see a little glimpse of it in the special editions for the bonus material,
Yeah.
but it was never used.
Yeah. I think they should have done that, where we could see.
That would
where
have been cool.
we could see like what happened to them afterwards. Like, I don't know, even as an appendices, because I think that they wanted to just end it the way they did with the famous line from Sam. But
It's you can do all this in a book, but in a movie, it would be too many endings.
yeah.
Teresa, you forgot to mention that Pippin has a son named Faramir.
Oh, yes, he does. Yes, he does indeed. That's
I
a
just gotta
great
point
name
that
for
out.
a son.
I would say Clemens would have been better, but
Oh no,
Oh my goodness.
Steve, don't. Steve likes the name Clemens for. It's the thing in our Conan deal, because Mara got a pet and he wanted her to call him Clemens, and she
it had a name tag. It said Clemens on it.
No, it didn't have a name tag, Steve.
Mm.
You imagined that it did. You say you wish that you had put it there. But in any case, when they go ahead and go, oh yeah, I forgot Legolas and his friend also went and dwelt in Ithilien too. And then when King Elisar gave up his life, Legolas followed at last the desire of his heart and sailed over the sea. And he took Gimli with them because of their great friendship, greater than any that has been between elf and dwarf. If this is true, then it is strange indeed that a dwarf should be willing to leave Middle-earth for any love, or that the Eldar should receive him, or that the lords of the West should permit it. But it is said that Gimli went also out of desire to see the beauty of Galadriel, and it may be that, being mighty among the Eldar, obtained this grace for him. More cannot be said of this matter. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it was lovely. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. Arwen went to Lothlorien, to the place you met Aragorn, lay down and passed. Yeah, so she just went and died. Yeah. And Sam had like 200 million children.
Yes.
Like 13. And then also Merry and Pippin get to go. So all the Fellowship get to go to the West. And then doesn't Sam he outlives Rosie?
Yeah, Rosie winds up passing, I think, can't remember what age she passed at, but it's sad. But I mean, he has all those kids to remember by, but it's probably from having all those kids.
Well, yeah. Well, I think she was pretty old.
Yeah.
She let's see, I forget how old he was, but so then Sam finally hops over. Yeah. Gosh, I love it, and I love the fact that he lets us know what happens to them. Yeah. Fair klimt. Yeah, Merry and Pippin were entombed next to Aragorn. Oh, really? For some reason I thought they got to go over the sea. Did I mess up? Oh,
It's
I'm a terrible, terrible human being. Th- They did not. They did not. They were laid to rest in Minas Tirith. Okay. I can't believe I fecked that up. Well, shoot me now. Okay, so they didn't go over the sea. Okay. Yeah, Tad says, I attended Jesuit high school when the priest did his PhD dissertation in theology on Tolkien's impression of the Catholic canon and his construction of the end of life for men and elves. Yes. Yeah, and Tolkien even said that this was a story about immortality. Okay. All right. I can't believe that I forgot that. I did not reread the appendices, but gosh, it's so moving. And then that's the end of it. We went there and back again. So now that we're done, Stiga, I didn't know if you had any final thoughts on the whole daggone thing.
No, it's a rock solid book.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And most fantasy stories, the big ones, spring from this, really.
Yeah.
So, incredible impact on society, I guess. What else? Very rereadable, because we kind of discovered a lot of stuff that we seem to have missed.
yeah.
Little references and stuff like that. So there's a lot in it that you probably won't notice the first time.
Yeah. Well, and I've reread these like a gazillion times, and you always find something new, and it never fails to move you, in my humble.
Oh, and they're timeless. They deal with timeless, um, timeless things that everyone can relate to, no matter where you're from.
Yes.
Which is a shame with what Amazon's doing, because they're dating it. They're putting politics from 2022 directly into the universe, which goes completely against the whole design of the work,
Exactly.
which is the same that happened to Star Wars. Star Wars was also designed to be timeless, which is why it's set in a galaxy far, far away, away from the whole planet we're on. So as soon as you start putting stuff from current day, you're going to date it, which means it's not going to be timeless, which means it's not going to have any lasting effect like the original work did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
like, the people of Somalia don't give a shit about American identity politics. They can't even relate to it.
mm-hmm.
But they
Yeah.
can relate to what's happening in the Lord of the Rings.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, the Ted that shouldn't be mentioned is Tolkien's work and Robert E. Howard's. Yes, Robert E. Howard, what he did with Conan.
Yeah, Robert E. Howard, to a lesser degree than Tolkien, but he completely started the sword and sorcery genre,
Mm-hmm.
which is that name sprung up because they didn't have a name for it. So it's basically, okay, it's a barbarian who fights wizards, so sword and sorcery, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's he's more influential though than people think and give him credit for, because I see a lot of famous fantasy writers today that they all speak highly of Robert E. Howard.
Yep. Exactly. Precisely. So, Rennie, any thoughts from you?
Like I was saying earlier, just very bittersweet. I think for the most part, a lot of people had a decent end. It's just, when the story and the writing is so great, you don't want it to end. It's like, oh no, this can't be the end already. No, I don't want it to end. There's got to be another chapter. There's got to be more out there somewhere. So, Frodo getting that, even though it's kind of sad, but at the same time, getting that honor of being able to go to Valinor is pretty amazing. And, being able to go with this uncle and, with Galadriel and Elrond and Gandalf is pretty nice. At least Aragorn and Arwen also had, a good couple hundred, almost couple hundred years together, or maybe 100 and something years together.
Yeah.
Before he passed. So, because he was 87, but he died at 2 something, right? I want to say.
Yeah, because he had like some of that Numenor blood in him.
Yeah. So they had some time together. Just unfortunately, it wasn't, it's never enough. So,
No.
But at the same time, they had love and happiness while they were able to have it. And, they had a son together, and, the kingdom was happy because he was a great king. So, and Merry and Pippin had honorable roles in Rohan and Gondor, respectively. Sam becomes mayor of Hobbiton and has lots and lots and lots and lots of kids. And, and he inherits Bag End and all of that stuff. So they have good lives. It's just, we don't want to see them go. So,
Yeah.
it's what it is. But yeah, it's a good story. And, it's so hard because you have those moments of empowerment, whether it be male or female, but they're not done to teach anyone a lesson. They're just done because they're good for the story. And writing like this is so hard to find nowadays. Can you find a modern writer that writes like this anymore? I just don't know.
We can have ones that come close, like Terry Brooks and Feist, as I'm discovering.
Yeah, Robert Jordan. I'd say Robert Jordan came closest. Because you need a massive chunk of lore as well, and he certainly has that. He didn't create a language though.
No.
The only one that I've seen that has actually created a language is Karen Travis. She created the Mandalorian language for the Lucas era Star Wars. And she quit because Filoni fucked up the lore.
Yeah.
Can't blame her for that.
Yeah, and then later on, Filoni starts using her Mandalorian language in The Mandalorian.
Because you know what? He's not creative.
No, he basically got a woman to quit because he fucked up her books, and then he steals the stuff from her books and takes credit.
Yeah. He's a bit of a snake. Speaking of backstabbers, that's the story of Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what can we say? I don't call this a 10 out of 10. I call this an 11 out of 10, a 12 out of 10, because this work is far beyond anything. You can't compare it to anything. It's oh boy, it's just perfect. Everything about it, and even the parts that we talked about that maybe we think are superfluous or kind of some of that Tom Bombadil stuff, it's still brilliant. And the more I read, the more I see how it all fits. Sort of Poopin says, I always wish there were more stories about them, but they would have been so anticlimactic. Yeah. Tolkien was wise enough to leave it alone. His one attempt at a sequel was never finished. Yeah, and I think that he found it to be a little too dark as well, because he was bringing it toward its logical conclusion, which is basically that despite everything, wars still happen, people still suck, all that. The Ted that would be, he's recommending Guy Goriel K or the Riddlemaster trilogy by Patricia A. McPhillip. Okay. Well, yeah, and we always encourage reading fantasy books. I don't know if you follow Stieg or me or Rennie on Twitter, but there's a lot of fantasy recommendations. Stieg did a thread that really took off where everyone mentioned what their favorite fantasies were that were not the Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, that was a pretty good thread. I really
Yeah.
like that.
So if you want to find some good books. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. This is not the end. This is not the end. We are going to continue because we're going to start next week with The Hobbit. We will not be going into a great deal of detail with The Hobbit, though. We're looking at doing it in 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. We're just going to do half and half. So 2 weeks of The Hobbit, and then we're going to delve into the Silmarillion, and goodness knows how long that'll take us because there's a lot of depth in there. There's a lot of depth in there that we will definitely be needing to go through, and I hope you will go with us on this ride. Thanks for this video. Well, thank you for being here. The tab but shouldn't be. Thank you for sort of Poopas, Keck 44, everyone that's been coming in and contributing. Timon came in. If I missed anyone, I sincerely apologize. It's always great to see you all, and you've gone on this journey with us. That has been amazing. And it's not over. It's not over. Oh yes, Zakrot 315. Thank you. Yes, you were the first one in here. Snortopoopas waves a paw and waddles off, snuffling sadly. Yes. Well, we're gonna go there and back again, backwards. So, not all was it? What is it that Gandalf said? Not all goodbyes are sad or something like that. I don't know.
Not all tears are an evil.
There you go. Thank you. All right, well, have a great day, everyone. Have a great day, and be certain to read good fantasy.